my mom's hope for a happily ever after story by being way too suspicious about her new boyfriend. But let me give you some background first. I've lived with my mom for my whole life. I never even knew my father, and my mom's parents died before I was even born, so it was always just the two of us in the family. Mom worked hard as a waitress and at a dry cleaner, and she's always been quite a romantic daydreamer when it comes to guys. Every time she meets a man, she's sure that he's the one. She falls in love fast and then cries on my shoulder completely broken-hearted at the end. I, on the other hand, try to be more realistic, but still supportive of her. I knew for now that I was her only constant defender, and I always at least tried to act like a real grown-up man. For example, when Mom finished her job too late one night, I met her when she was coming home from work, since the block of the city we live on is not that great. I was okay with taking care of Mom, even though I still had some growing up to do, and we did pretty well most of the time. That's about it for the history. Now let's get into the actual story. One night, Mom was getting ready for another date, and as usual, I was trying to calm her down and instruct her so she wouldn't be so overly affectionate and trusting, at least on the first date. She was very inspired and excited about the guy she was going out with that night, which made me start to think this was a bad sign, and that she was going to have her heart broken again. When somebody knocked on the door, I went to open it and saw the guy. I can't actually say why, but he seemed different from any of my mom's previous dates. And I wasn't sure if that was bad or good. He was sort of polite and well-dressed. I mean, not like a rich person, but still like a gentleman. And he even had a small bouquet of flowers with him. Our interaction lasted for about a minute. And then the two of them left. But for no actual reason that I could pinpoint, I found myself suspicious about him. Something was definitely wrong with him, I thought. The next day, I saw how happy my mom was. She had that in-love smile on her face and was singing some sort of love song in a soft voice. I immediately recognized the signs of her having fallen in love again. Of course, I started to ask questions about the guy, wondering who he was and how he earned his living. His name was Erwin, by the way. I don't know exactly if it was because Mom was tired of my questions or because this man was really special for her, but she told me to save all my questions to ask him directly at a dinner we were all having together this coming Friday. I had never eaten with any of my mom's boyfriends before, but since the meal was on him, I didn't actually mind. On Friday evening, we were already sitting in a cozy little restaurant, having a pretty good meal. I saw that Erwin was a little bit nervous, and that made me feel like I had some control over him. I began questioning him about his past. He said that at first, he worked as a sales representative in one firm, but then the company went bankrupt, and then he didn't have an income for a little while. Then he began working as an odd jobber, since he was skilled in plumbing, woodworking, and so on. But then he told me something that infuriated me. He said that once, the house he'd been working on had been robbed, and he was accused of it and went to jail. To me, this just meant that from all the men on the earth my mom had to pick from, she had chosen a felon. I couldn't believe what I'd heard, and I couldn't let my mom date a former prisoner. That's why, even unexpectedly for myself, I just grabbed my mom and left the restaurant without finishing our meal, saying ultimately that Erwin had better leave us alone. Mom and I stayed silent the whole way home. I knew she was angry at my reaction, but I believed it was the only right thing to do. The next day, I could tell that she was still angry at me. I, on the other hand, did want to cheer her up and tried my best to act as if nothing actually happened back there at the restaurant. But then suddenly, my mom, who has always been easygoing and smiley, angrily said that I had no right to do what I'd done. Her reaction made me furious. Wasn't she the one who had always insisted on the fact that I was almost a man and responsible for her? We started our quarrel, and I ended up saying that if she keeps associating with that man, I'll leave her and she won't ever see me again. Of course, I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to influence her decision. But she kept on doing whatever she wanted and acted really dramatic when she was preparing for another date with him. I was outraged, but I couldn't come up with anything to do to prevent their relationship. Then the thought came to my mind that if my normally obedient mom had decided to rebel this time, maybe this guy was special. The only thing I had left to do was to try to speak to him one more time. The next morning I found myself with Mom's cell phone in my hands texting Erwin on her behalf that he needed to come over to talk. Mom had no idea what I had done. At the agreed upon time, I met him halfway and decided to give him a second chance to explain everything. Erwin told me that he really had stolen that money from the house, But he literally had nothing to pay for his living expenses at the time, and he was going to return all the money, but instead got caught by the police. No one believed him, and he was taken to jail. He has been strictly punished for his deed and no longer works as an odd jobber. Now he works in a crisis center with minors who are in trouble with the law. He teaches them woodworking, plumbing, and everything he himself knows, so they have the ability to earn some money with honest employment. You know, I was embarrassed and felt really sorry about what I'd done. I didn't mean to offend him, and I actually had ruined the relationship between him and my mom and made them both unhappy, but I knew how I could figure everything out. I arranged another meeting with Erin later that day at our apartment. I made a dinner for him and Mom, keeping everything in secret from her, and when he came in, she was really surprised. You should have seen how tenderly they looked at each other. I left the house, letting them spend some time alone. I knew that he was still a former prisoner, and he did what he did, but everyone, I think, deserves a second chance to become happy. You see, the fact that I felt like I had to be a parent to my mother really played an evil trick on me, and in turn made me overconfident about making some snap judgments without fully thinking them through. I've now realized that no one is allowed to pin labels on anyone else without having first walked in his or her shoes. Since that evening, Erwin and I have a pretty good relationship, and I see a twinkle in Mom's eyes and feel happy for her, and these things make me happy. Now, tell me honestly, do you label people? How do you feel about that? Write your answers in the comments to this video, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you